lovers, and welcome. I want to start off by saying I am so blessed to be in a position to suggest tips and tools and even products that can help you lead a tantric life of liberation and expansion. And one of my absolute favorite places to purchase spiritual and sexy items is Wands. Wands.com, spelled Wands. Wands sells, you guessed it, crystal pleasure wands, along with so much more, including yoni eggs, free bleed blankets, other amazing products for yoni steaming. I've been using these products and products similar to them for the better part of a decade, and they have been incredible allies in my journey of sexual healing and expanding my orgasmic potential. And I'm so grateful to be friends with the owner, Courtney. She's amazing. She has so generously provided us all with a discount code for 15% off, and that code is Leola. Leola. You can use it on their website, www.wands.com. Again, the code is Leola, Leola, for 15% off. I'll also make sure that this is linked in the show notes. So thank you for listening, and you're welcome for the inevitable pleasure and healing that is coming your way with these products. Now, let's get into the episode. Hello and welcome to Talk Tantra to Me. It is such an honor to be holding space for this divine knowledge to make its way into your ears and lifestyle. Today, I talk Tantra with one of my beautiful, radiant, youthful friends, Amy Edwards. Amy is in her 50s, which is insane. If you're looking at the video right now, you'll probably be in the same position I was when I first met her, just awestruck by her beauty and aliveness. Amy is the host of the Amy Edwards Show, which is an incredible podcast that I've had the pleasure of being a guest on as well. And this podcast really helps others transform their life and become their best, most epic version of themselves at any and every age through more efficient and effective habits, mindset shifts, and radical honesty. Amy is also a voice professional. She has over 30 years of experience on air radio and has recorded and released 5 albums as a solo rock artist in her 40s. She is also the author of 2 books and a Reiki master, and like the bio's still going, guys. She's also an advocate for Fight for the Forgotten and the women's initiative that she helped to found, Fight for Her. And Fight for Her helps to improve the lives of Batwa pygmy women and girls.
Batwa.
Batwa,
the Batwa women.
thank you.
Yeah.
Batwa pygmy. I should have clarified that before I started recording.
Okay.
Batwa pygmy women and girls to build independence and empower their future. So this woman is a powerhouse. She's doing a bunch of super awesome things. She's also one of the most friendly and open-hearted people I have ever met. I'm so grateful to be her friend. I'm so grateful for her content, and so appreciative that she's here on the podcast to offer her perspective of living an expansive life. So thank you so much for being here, Amy.
Thank you. And thank you for everything you said. It's made my heart like have those heart feelings, all those beautiful feelings. Thank you so much. I love you so much. I'm so happy to be here. It's my honor. I was so thrilled that you asked.
Yes, me too. And just to give a little background, so Amy and I met at like a ceremony here in Austin through one of my mutual friends who was helping organize it, and Amy was helping organize it and was doing some like sound. You were doing sound bowls and things,
I
right?
did sound, and it was Bijou, Mushroom Mamacita, friend of the show. She's been on my show many times, a close soul sister of mine.
Yeah, it was an epic, beautiful experience. And after that, you had asked me to come on your show, and we connected, and then we just kept kind of like dancing in the space. And I remember when I first found out that you were in your 50s, and I was like flabbergasted, again, because you're gorgeous and so youthful, and yeah, just such evidence of what's possible for aging and for women and for motherhood. And on top of that, I also have had this experience with women that are of different ages where so much in our society, we par off to people that are just in our age group, and we spend so much time with people that are just in our age group, which isn't really how we're meant to live, like as a society. In more ancient times, we lived in a tribe, and we were around people of all ages, and we were around birth, and we were around death. And like, I'm 30, and like, I've never seen a birth, and I've actually also never seen death. And it's like a really interesting thing to start to I just love like having people in my life that are in from different backgrounds, in different age groups. I think that it's really healthy, and I want more of that. But I feel like there's often this like resistance from people to connect with people outside of their age group. And I'm not really sure why. I think maybe it's this like, you don't get it energy, or I don't know, but I'm curious how you feel about that. Like, how do you feel about the age difference? I know you have a lot of
Yeah,
friends that are different ages too.
I do. And I wonder if I just have a different mentality around it for some reason. I don't know what it is. Because when you mentioned birth and death, that's such an interesting way to relate it, that tribal mentality of connection and being with people. I have seen birth. And when I gave birth both times, I like invited people to come on in. And like I had my mother-in-law there, my dad didn't want to, but my
But
sister,
you
my
invited him.
friend, I did. I was like, you know what, if you want to. And like it was something about the energy. I wanted people present for those. I witnessed and was with both my parents when they died. So I have seen that firsthand, been right there. And like those are such pivotal, important moments. And maybe that relates to like the way I see aging. I hadn't really thought about it. And it's so funny because, like, with you, I forget that you're 30, and I'm like, we're just friends, you know? And when I let that creep in about, oh, you're 50, you're about to be 52, you should be doing X, and you should, it's just, it's weird. It pulls me out of the moment, it pulls me out of living, and it puts these like societal constructs onto the way things should, those stupid shoulds, right? And like
Yeah.
the way things should be. And I follow a lot of women that are also in their 50s or talking about, aging and feeling youthful and things like that. And breaking stereotypes. And they get a lot of comments. I was just thinking about this, putting on my makeup, about one woman who was posting about her makeup, and people were saying, you shouldn't be wearing makeup. You shouldn't have hair extensions. Just all these things like that. Like, says who? Says who that you and I can't be friends? It's like, it's just breaking out of what we're told, which is kind of the story of my life, Leola. It's like breaking out of what I've been told I should be doing and really getting in touch with my truth. And my truth is that I love people and I can learn from absolutely anybody. And I cherish friendships. And like, you are just brilliant. When you were on my show, I was like, oh my God, she's so smart and she knows just so much about her field and beyond. And I was just like, let's be friends. And we have to just drop these things like this. And it's the stories, right? It's the stories that we've been told. It's the stories we've subscribed to. It's all these little things that have crept in and taken over. And when we can drop those, then we're free to just be and live and
Mm,
connect. And that is a tantric space, right? Like that's that freedom. That's that beautiful living, that alive energy, I think.
yeah. Yep. Yep. Amy
Yeah.
is turned on by life. She is. And I love that you brought in that piece of freedom, like finding the freedom
Hmm.
in all of this. Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
powerful. And I love how you are really evidence and permission for so many people to find their joy, to find their pleasure, to find their truth at any age. And seeing you now too, like you just got engaged. Like I'm like, ah, it's so incredible. How has
I
that
wanna, I
been?
wanna be there. I wanna listen to you, and I wanna like it, be led by the moment. And I don't want anybody to think that like this just happened. This was something I have really put my, walk the walk of what I talk in my show and everything else. Like, it is me getting in touch with who I really wanted to be, to my true
Mm,
voice. And throughout my life, you mentioned my radio experience, my voice professional and all that. And I didn't understand why I was called to that. I didn't understand until my late 40s why I became an independent music artist. I didn't understand how these pieces fit together. And once I really started loving myself and doing the work to get into my truth, oh, it started to really make sense. I was like, oh, I'm all about
Mm.
using my voice. I'm all about finding that truth and listening to others and connecting in that way. And so it just began to make sense. And me feeling good at in my 50s and beyond is a result of that work too. So if somebody's wondering about that, you just keep doing the habits, keep doing the mindset shifts, keep saying your affirmations, keep doing the things, because even into my 40s I had some dark times, and you just keep living, and soon you become someone who knows that your best days are still to come. You've had some, sure, but there's still more to come. And that is so powerful to me. I just love it so much. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's such a powerful concept. It's something that I talk about a lot with my clients and even in coaching myself. When there is a hard moment or a rough day, I remind myself that it's not about never having these days. That's not why I'm doing this work. It's about no matter what happens externally or internally with my own shifts or beliefs or hormones or whatever, that no matter what happens, I know that I can get back to the truth of who I am.
Mm.
And I can connect to my highest self, and I can connect to something bigger than myself as well, no matter what happens. And also using the tools I've gained in the process, finding a quicker route into that truth and into that
Yeah.
belief. So instead of it being, days or weeks or months of being stuck in the dark places, I've built this trust with myself to get myself into a more expansive mindset and way of being faster and more effectively at the same time.
Yeah, I love that so much, because it's that shortening that time that you bounce back, right? Like, is it going to be weeks? Is it going to be days? Is it going to be, a matter of hours or minutes, and then you can develop those habits and shift your state, right? Tony Robbins talks a lot about state change. I love that. I mean, I started listening to him in the 90s, and I think that that gave me a good foundation for understanding that we can lean into a state change when we need it. Go outside, finding these little tiny tools that can help us sometimes when we recognize, oh my gosh, I'm like, I have the blues. I experienced some of it yesterday. And so it's not like it goes away. It's just, I knew that this too shall pass, right? It's just Ram Dass, talks about the cloud. There's still the blue sky behind it. We just have that cloud. And so I love Ram Dass. And so that's that knowing that everything is always moving, including our energy. And if we can just lean into that a little bit more, then it can pass a little bit sooner, rather than, toughening up and resisting it or being mad about it or wallowing in it even. And I had a moment yesterday, something hit me, and I just like, I knew no one was home, and I started crying, and it was like a
Mm.
sobbing cry, which I don't know. Sometimes, a cry is something that'll hit me, but I'm not like, ah, and I just had a moment. I was like, well, I'm just going to let it out. Nobody's here to hear me. And that was kind of nice. And then it passed. And later in the day, I told Justin about it, and we chatted about it. And I was like, I cried today. And it felt good just to kind of get it out. But also it's like you're talking about. I got out in nature. I did some things. I showered, I saunaed. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, like, those physical changes can help with that emotional stagnancy that you might be experiencing or something, and get it moving. So I don't know if that's a key to youthfulness or not, but maybe, because sometimes you can say people get stuck in their ways, and I think that I definitely have friends that are my age that are completely different than me, and I am determined to keep living. And for me, that means, getting that energy going, and connecting with people all the time. And I mean, I have friends that don't have friends that are 30. I mean, my partner is 15 years younger than me. Justin is 36. And so, you know, and I didn't see that coming. And it's so fun. You're
I can't, I
laughing.
want to get into that. I want to get into the relationship, but I do want to close the loop
Yeah.
on this, like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
state change piece, because I think it's really, really important and valuable for people. Like I'm hearing you talk about your journey and, like, thinking about, okay, how do you get to this point to where you're in the type of energy that you're in. And my
Mhm.
experience and what I'm hearing from you as well is that it's not necessarily like one big shift. It's like over time realizing what works for you. And there's so much evidence out there of what's working for other people that you could try on. But it's really about finding, like, what is your path, what works for you to move you through the dark moments. And what's helped me as well is having some non-negotiables to even, like, just be in a regular maintenance with my body, with my emotional state. For example, I don't do any appointments or calls before noon. That's just a non-negotiable for me. I won't do it. I like to have my spaciousness in the morning. Sometimes I work before noon, but I'm not taking any calls or, like, appointments. And I usually go for a walk every day. I go for a walk with my dog. Being out in nature is a non-negotiable for me every day. So I think it's just like, once you start to figure out what works, then, like, doubling down on it and making it a more holistic part of your lifestyle, so you're regularly clearing yourself, if you will.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean,
Um,
it just becomes you. It becomes like brushing your teeth. Like, you don't
yeah,
think about not doing that. Like, you get up and that's what you do because you know what happens, right? You feel good.
yeah.
You feel like freshened up and all that. And that's what the walk is. That's what the meditation is, that it just becomes you. And
Mhm.
that's what's funny. It's taken me the diligence of doing those things and really like making the list every day and really staying on top of it to become it. And now it just is me. And now I'm able. It did take practice. It did, everything's a practice. I mean,
Yeah.
and so you can fall out of it and back, but pretty soon you'll fall into way more positive thought loops. For instance,
Mhm.
I was a ruminator. So when I went to bed, I would think just crappy thoughts and they would get on a loop in my head. And I had to consciously change those and find a new loop that I didn't even really believe, but I was like, oh, fuck it. I'm going to say it anyway. And so when I was falling asleep, I would say, I love myself, life loves me. And I just put that on repeat. I still do it. I still do it when I lay down to sleep. And it helps me get a freshened thought loop. And now it's become me. It's easy. I lay down and just like naturally happens. And I don't just ruminate on negative thoughts as I did for, I'd say 45 years, probably. I mean,
Wow.
I did it as long as I could remember. I didn't even understand that I was doing it until I learned what ruminations were. And I did do some different types of therapy and plant medicines and things like that to help me reset my neural pathways, which worked for me. Now, not everybody needs that, but it did work for me. Now I'm in a phase of nothing, no plant medicines, no alcohol, no nothing. And that's outside my comfort zone. And that's teaching me something new. And so,
Mm.
I did a series of ketamine. I did some medicine with Bufo. I did different things that helped me reset the neural pathways. And I needed something a little more intense. And sometimes people do, sometimes people don't. Sometimes those things come your way for a reason. And maybe it's an opportunity to lean into it and say yes. And that's going to be some transformation for you that resets some things and moves you into that transformation space, into that, oh my gosh, I'm really outside my comfort zone and I'm growing and I'm expanding. And that is where that energy and youthfulness lies. That's where you can maybe find a reset. That's where you can find new things that work for you. And I was glad that you brought up finding what works for you and what doesn't. I talk a lot about that on my show. I'm like, take what works for you, leave the rest. It's okay. Not everything works for everybody. I feel like there's been a push on social media. I think you and I talked about this on the show of everybody saying like, oh, you have to be a carnivore right now or whatever it
Yeah.
is. And letting go of all that. What works for me? And that also loosens me up in judgment toward other people. It allows me to say to them like, oh, hey, that works for you. Okay, man. great. That's awesome. It may not be my thing, and that's all right. And so I'm able to let go of judgments too, which has been a big part of the last couple of years for me. Letting go of judgments, like very live and let live. And I personally love
Mm.
being in that space and letting go of judgments toward myself. So it's all like recognizing when I'm holding onto those judgments, and those, man, I don't know if you agree with this, Leola, but I think when you can really loosen up around that, it like when you're tightening up and stuff, it shows on your face. So
Yep.
if you want to look youthful and if you want to glow, that's not the path, like go have more orgasms and let go of judgment rather than, tightening
Amen.
up. And
Yeah, I think on your podcast we talked about shame-free diet, and I think what
Mhm.
could go along with that in this context is like a worry-free diet, and like, yeah, just like letting go of the anxieties, letting go of the ruminating. That's definitely been a big thing for me. And affirmations have actually worked really well for me as well. I know some people are like, you know, affirmations are just woo woo or like whatever. And I think that there is a embodiment piece that goes along with affirmations the more you use them. But anyways, I love that. Um,
Yeah, I'm a
I love
big fan
this
of
so much.
affirmations. I really am. I keep them in my shower. I, I just, they've helped me so much. Even when you don't think they're true, you're really talking about a deep truth, a soul truth. You are love. You are loved. I mean, it's so basic, but at the same time, we just don't believe it so many times. And that's so wild how we refuse it and we would just want to believe the negative stuff. It's just as easy to believe the positive stuff. So you might as well give it a shot.
Give it a shot.
Give it a shot. I am. And I mean, that goes for even what you were talking about with youthfulness and with things that you might be limiting by saying yourself. I mean, Justin was just saying that yesterday or day before. He was like, well, I don't know. I'm not a morning person. And I was like, not with that attitude. If you want to be a morning person, start saying like, I feel good in the mornings or just whatever, shift any little thing that you can find. Like, oh, I'm too far gone and I'm too old. Well, just quit it. Quit saying that right now. Just get that out of your vocabulary for a while. Do it for 2 weeks. It's not a lifelong commitment. And then just start saying, I am fun. I am youthful. I connect with others. I love people. I love myself. People love me. I mean, and you just get on a roll and it's really fun when you can just like start playing with it. And even if you laugh at it, who cares? Even if you're saying it sarcastically, who cares? I've said things sarcastically that totally have come true. And I always laugh at that. And I'm like, I think sometimes sarcasm maybe has some power because you're actually saying something positive. Like when one of my favorite examples is when I started this podcast show that I have now, and it was in 2020. And Joe Rogan had just moved to town, and I told people, oh, I'm starting this new podcast with the network, and they said, oh, you're gonna have to meet Joe Rogan, and I was like, what? I was like, yeah, I'm sure I'm just gonna bump right into Joe Rogan. I'm sure I'm gonna meet him right away. Well, I had that happen several times, and I said the same kind of sarcastic remark. And by the end of the year, I had met Joe like twice, and I was like, that is hilarious. And I was like, maybe there's some power in that. So I mean, why not just say, yes, I'm sure I'm going to become a millionaire in the next 5 years or whatever it is. Like, why not?
Yeah,
I
I
just
kind
went
of
off
like
on a
to
total tangent there. Sorry.
I love it. I kind of like, I think of it like playing dress up. Like, I'm going to try on this like crazy dress. It's so impractical, but it's fun.
Yes.
Like, can I just
Hmm.
try this on? Can I try on this new thought and just see what it feels like, what it looks like, how people react to it? Can I be seen in this thought? And you might end up realizing, like, oh, actually, I can pull this off. I can pull off this red, strappy thought that I thought was like way too sexy or whatever it is. You know what I mean? So like that's the analogy that I like to use. And
It's
I'm
such a good
curious.
analogy because you can take it off. I mean, it's not a commitment, right? Like,
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah. Hello, lovers. Please bear with me for a brief interruption with a vulnerable share and offer from my heart. So, when I first began my journey with spiritual intimacy and sacred sexuality, all I could afford were books and free podcasts. I was just out of college in my early 20s and honestly very, very broke. And I'm so grateful for all the complimentary, kind words, and affordable wisdom that have gotten me where I am today. Price shouldn't deter you from healing. It shouldn't deter you from living the life you love or from reclaiming the most powerful energy in your body. It's my belief that time and commitment are also very powerful investments, especially when you're just dipping your toes in the water. You'll know when it's time to make the bigger cash investments in your journey. But let's begin together today with free love from my heart to yours. As you've already discovered, this podcast is free and it includes so much life-changing wisdom, but I'd also love to guide you to some free offers that are on my website, including a downloadable sexual shadow work workbook and a pleasure positive meditation. Both of these resources are amazing places to start in integrating the tantric principles of expansion and liberation into your life. And you can access these at www.talktantratome.com/free or find a direct link in the show notes. Now let's get back to the episode. Okay, so we've been talking about Justin a little bit, but not directly. And I'd love to bring that in. So you have a partner who is such a Viking hottie, also 15 years younger than you, and you guys just got engaged in Egypt, but it's also been a journey, and I know that you got divorced, and how did your perspective around agelessness and finding your voice support you in that journey of finding love, in your middle age?
I think it was really, really that journey of coming back to myself. And I've been married twice and divorced twice, and I have a daughter from each marriage. They are teenagers now, 14 and 18, about to be 15 and 19. And I really didn't know it at the time, but in hindsight, I wasn't being true to myself in both of those in many ways. And so once I finished that second marriage or started the divorce process, I gained an understanding that I didn't really know who I was and I didn't really love myself. And that's when I started on all of this self-discovery journey. As so often happens to people, I would say in their 40s, 30s, 40s, it's really common. And we start to go, who am I? What am I really doing with my life? And I realized that I wasn't using my own voice. As a matter of fact, as soon as we started getting a divorce and I moved out and everything, I lost my voice. I got sick really just woke up one day and I was sick and I thought, oh, I got a cold or something like that. And it just didn't go away. And I kept losing my voice. And I realized that was actually representing my throat chakra and that I wasn't speaking my truth and I wasn't being true to who I was. And I thought, oh my gosh, I got to get this right. And there were ways I had to stand up for myself in that divorce process that were really challenging for me. Some of the darkest times of my life. And that is not hyperbole. And as the year progressed, this was 2018, my voice got worse. I ended up having to have a surgical procedure in my sinuses called like a sinuplasty or balloonoplasty, where they go in and it still didn't heal. It took another 3 months after that. It was harrowing time because I had just finished another album and I couldn't even perform it and I couldn't sing. And I just was so sad not to have my voice physically. And I realized, oh, you don't even have it in other ways. So how can I fix that? And it became such a priority for me. And so I started to understand how to get true to myself and true to my voice and true to every single thing that I was saying. And once I started doing that, I developed a love affair with myself, I'll say. And that's how I grew into having this partner and this relationship that I have now. And it's so much more fulfilling than anything I've ever experienced. And it was because of that coming back to myself, because of loving myself, because of that truth piece that I began to speak to myself. And that includes the affirmations that we were just talking about. So if anybody listening to this is feeling off in their life, how can we truly tap into what we want to say? I didn't even know what I wanted to say. And that was a big piece of it too. Sexually, I wasn't really in touch with what I wanted. I was more in touch with pleasing the other person. And
Mm-hmm.
I guess you could call it performative. So I had to get in touch with sexually with myself. And that meant really pleasure practices, really not having any fantasies when I was doing it, just tapping into my body, just understanding what feels good to me, using a yoni egg, things like that, mirror practice, these things that push your edges a little bit with yourself, by yourself, but they push your edges. And that is when you fall more in love with yourself and you force yourself to say, how can I expect anyone to love me if I don't really truly love myself? If I don't truly love having sex with me, then what? I'm going to feel insecure in those situations. So loving that, all the parts of yourself, and even the decisions that you've made that maybe aren't the greatest, or maybe you are judging, like, how can you give grace to those? And it was really just such a massive overhaul. And I had to date again. I had to learn to date at 46 or 47. And I was like, I'm going to learn to date. And all these people say, oh, dating sucks, all these negative things. And then you want to be like, yeah, dating sucks. No, I was like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to enjoy it. And if I don't enjoy it, I'm not going to do it. And so I decided that I would enjoy dating and have fun with it. And you know what? Then I was just dating a ton, and I gained an understanding of not holding on to someone in a relationship, and understanding that no, I need to see what that person is offering me, and then I get to decide. And then once I decide, oh, yes, I like what you're offering me, you're stepping up to claim me, then that's a yes from me. And so I didn't give that away. And it was a process to understand that. I still had a couple guys that I held on a little tightly. And I dated men and women too. I wanted to explore everybody because I wasn't sure what I wanted, and I'd never allowed myself that freedom. So I really leaned into finding my truth. I keep saying leaned in, but I did. And so that was just another aspect of it. And so I know that people tune into you a lot for, the sexual aspect of Tantra and all that. And so that was a huge part of getting in touch with your truth for me. And so if someone's wondering about that, I would say, yeah, keep going, because there can be so much to be found there. And so I started to make a list. I've talked about this a lot on my show. I started to make a list of what my ideal partner would be like. And I took things I liked from different people. I kind of created a little Frankenstein list at the bottom, like, oh, from him, I took this, and from him, I took this. And,
Oh.
and it kind of kept you focused on the positive aspects of the people that you had been dating too.
Mm.
And that was nice. And I just compiled this evolving, beautiful list that was pretty crazy. I mean, it was like, I said, he should be a public figure of some sort, which Justin is, of like a speaker or an athlete or something like that. And I mean, I said, should be 6'3" or 6'4", 6'5", and have a good dick that works. And I mean, like, just put everything on there, right? I just threw everything on there. Like, and loves being with me, opens car doors for me. I mean, it's a really detailed list. And once I read it, I thought, oh my gosh, this person is with a badass, like a really badass person. And so I had to make a new list underneath that. Who is he with? And because at that point I knew I wanted a man. And so I started a new list of who he was with. And then I just focused on that list and becoming that person. And so
Mm.
she's, very in touch with her truth. She's, she goes to yoga. I'd have to read through the list. I used to have it like memorized, but I worked hard to really just embody that person. And then you
Mhm.
just are in a space of trust and you love who you are so much. You're like, and one of them knows her worthiness and lives by it. And that is such a beautiful space to be. And I'm not saying it's a, all even climb to wherever you're trying to go. Of course, it's not linear, and it's ups and downs, but that's okay. Overall, your trajectory is moving toward where you want to be. And so that is what I worked to embody. And then, Justin, when he came into my life, I recognized that he was a lot more of what I was looking for than people I'd been dating. So I let go of those relationships very quickly. And I
Mm.
just said, I don't know if he's it, but he's in the direction that I'm trying to go. And so this is the type of man I want. So let's just keep moving that way. So the universe recognizes that that's what I'm doing, and I'm here for it. And it was hard, kind of, because I had to let go of some guys I was dating and tell them it's not working and we're not a fit. And they got kind of mad, and it was comfortable, so
Yeah.
you have to push yourself a little bit in those instances. And then Justin and I, once we got together, Justin is in recovery and he has gone to rehab in our relationship. So I still had to lean into those practices in our relationship. I still had to say, you know what? If he's not the person for me, it's okay. I'm going to still love myself. I'm going to trust that the right thing is coming. I'm going to surrender to these practices that I've cultivated, and come back to myself. I lost myself a few times along the way, and that's okay. I still
It
came
happened.
back to myself. It happens. And so I still came back to myself, and every time he stepped up. And now we've moved into a different phase, which is true commitment. And we understand that we are each completely in this. And that's really an incredible space to be in. And
Yeah.
so that's how that came about. If anybody's looking to call in a partner, it's a really fun thing to do, to start making those lists and to start really recognizing, what do I really want? And that's part of that speaking your truth. And that's part of accessing who you really are, which is exciting and fun.
I love there's so many things I want to double click on in what you just said, but
Double
I
click on it.
love that you shared this whole backstory of like the coming out of the divorce and the harrowing period and like the things that were happening with your throat and the closure and the invitation to expand there. And it's interesting that so often the things that are so challenging end up being the things that help us become a match for the thing that we're really wanting. They're an initiation of sorts into what we really desire. And also, that period has supported you in when there have been that moments in your relationship that have been hard, when, Justin was, going back to rehab in his recovery process, whatever, you had these practices that supported you in those other times to remain strong and unattached in a really healthy way. And I know for myself too, like there was a whole period in the larger part of my 20s. I met Andrew when I was 28. And we're married now. I'm 30. And but I was like craving partnerships so bad. Like I wanted my man, and it just wasn't happening because I had to figure myself out and figure out my truth. And interestingly, what you were saying reminded me there was like a 6 month period when I was like really finally like totally owning my work, like Tantra as my purpose. And a similar thing happened where like I lost my voice for like, and I could still talk and things, but yeah, like I lost my voice for months. So it was really interesting. And then the last thing I want to go in on a little bit deeper is this idea of leaning in. You had like talked about leaning in a lot and leaning in. And I've spoken about this on the podcast and in some other content, but so often people say, if it's not a fuck yes, it's a fuck no. And sometimes if it's not a fuck yes, maybe it's not a fuck no either, because it's your beliefs or your story or your past trauma that's keeping you from being a fuck yes. But is
Mm.
there an opportunity to lean in and to trust that no matter what happens, you got your own back? And that leaning in might be the opportunity to grow and to try something new. And that newness is maybe the secret to the agelessness and the youthfulness and
Mhm.
the bliss and the multi-orgasmic potential, whatever it is that's actually on the other side of your comfort zone where you lean in. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I think it was like a leaning into myself, to just
Mm.
like to that space of who I am and loving it, right? And that was a real big part of it, because in 2020, after like I got my voice back and things like that, I had a moment where, like you were saying, you wanted that relationship so bad. I had to go, you know what? I guess the pandemic happened and I just started to go, like I just played the game, right? What if this is it? What if I am just with me for the rest of my life? Like, what? how would I manage that? Would I be
Yeah.
happy? Could I be happy? And so I started to ask myself those questions. And that's that leaning into yourself. And said, well, I better just fucking love having sex with myself. I better love going on a date with myself. I better love just hanging out with me, whatever that is. I better be able to make jokes and make myself laugh. And so I made myself do that just to play with it. I better be so happy right here. And that's that gigantic paradox of loving yourself so much and being so happy. And that's when you attract all these things. And it's so crazy because it's that wanting energy that it says, I'm not enough. I have these holes in me, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
then you're attracting holes and nothing, And so you're just like, oh shit, I got to get really, really right with myself. And the funny part about that leaning in thing too is a big part of what I was doing in dating and some things in life is leaning back. And I
Mm-hmm.
joined this Facebook group that someone turned me on to when I started dating, and it was called like Embodied Woman or something. I can't think of the name of it. And I think her name is Jordana or something. And it was so good because it's all about leaning back in relationships and allowing someone to come to you and not
Mm-hmm.
pushing, not that forceful energy. And I think that so many times we want to make it work. And instead, when you're that early in a relationship, it's like, no, that's just not a fit. And so you lean back and you just allow things to flow, and things are way more fun. And I think there is that maybe give and take of when you lean back away from that relationship, you're leaning more into yourself. And so that's where that leaning in, leaning back kind of comes into play. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that you bring that in because that's definitely been a lesson that I've learned in marriage and in relationships. Like, there's the period where, you're falling in love and you're excited and you're on the honeymoon and it's like both people are leaning in and it's exciting. And then the relationship evolves and there's more, regularity and consistency and just a different energy comes in. And I definitely felt this desire of like, I want more of the new relationship energy. How do I keep that going? And my original strategy was to kind of pester my husband about it and be like,
Yeah.
we need to do more of this
Yeah.
thing. And like, why aren't you doing this? And it didn't shift anything. In fact, like it just made him really annoyed with me. And it wasn't until I was like, you know what? What if I just focused on myself, created that energy for myself, did what I love, dated myself again, kind of like how I did before he was here and just see what happens. And when I started to do that, he started to be more curious about what I was doing over there. And I just leaned back and he stepped forth. And that's really like polarity in the masculine and feminine in action. And
Yeah, I
yeah,
still do it too. I do the same thing. And I'll notice when I'm getting that pushing energy, and it goes for absolutely anything too. And it's just this giganto paradox of we think that we need to push outside to bring it in, but actually we have to really be it. You have to really embody it. And it's when you get happy in yourself, you're going to attract that happiness, right? Like you're going to attract a more peaceful situation in your relation. You're going to attract them like, hey, this feels good because
yeah.
you are really in that beautiful space. Like you're already it. And so that is the essence of what you and I are getting at today, cultivating that. And that is a process. That is not linear. That takes time. And maybe you accidentally go over here, whatever, and then you learn, oh yeah, I forgot. And so you come back to it. And that's totally okay. It's part of the process. It's part of being a human. But I love being in that space, remembering that and coming back to myself. And I think that that's where that glow comes from. That's if you desire that glow, then you're going to get into that happy space of yourself. And really, that goes for sexuality too. That goes for not putting pressure on yourself if you know, aren't, squirting all over the place. That's so what, right? Don't put the
Yep.
pressure on yourself, just relax. And that's where the magic happens. So
Yeah, I like that you brought in the sorting piece because that's a thing where it feels like there are some teachers out there that are saying if you're not ejaculating as a female and you're not having cervical orgasms and all that, then you're not a sexually embodied woman and you're not fully. And it's like maybe, and also like if you're so focused on one specific outcome in your pleasure or in anything in life, then you're probably missing all of the other magic that might be available that's not that one thing, and I think that it's more about just creating space for whatever magic is available to come through and not being focused on it looking a particular way. I'm curious how this has all like affected your sexuality and your pleasure. And
I'm
yeah,
just so glad to hear you say what you just said. That's if people don't take away anything else today, take that. That is so crucial because there is a lot of talk around like, oh, if you're not doing this, you're not going to call in millions of dollars and your dream partner and have the happiest life possible. It's like, well, fuck, I'm a failure. And I absolutely have gone through that. I thought I was a total failure because I wasn't having 8 orgasms each time. And I was like, I'm doing it wrong. And that's a hang up with me. That's one of my things is like as a Virgo kind of like I love to make a list and like I want the instructions and I want to do it right. And so
yep.
me learning that there is no right way, my way is just what it is, right? That is right. And there's no wrong. And so like letting go of that has been a big part of my learning. And that goes for sexuality. That goes for thinking that I was like failing at it essentially. And then I'm beating myself up. And then you're not having any pleasure because then you're all hung up in your head. And
Mm-hmm.
and I've just had to just breathe and let it be whatever the hell it is. And that means your own magic or whatever you might be accessing, what you just said. I love the way you said that so much. I mean, that has been a learning process for me and letting go of judgments, shame, bullshit stories that people have put in my head now because I'm not a fully embodied woman because I'm not doing X. And it's like, no, just relax. And that's been a good learning process too with a partner and us going, okay, this isn't so goal oriented. We're not going for the end game here. We're just able to be in this pleasure space together and it's been an evolution for both of us. I don't want to speak for Justin, but many times men, if they're doing an erotic blueprint, are sexual and visual and breaking out of that a little bit more into some more open spaces that sexuality can be all these different things. And I didn't really have that understanding until I worked on it. I went to a play party, my first play party I went to that Kimmy Inch put on. Good friend of my show, highly recommend everything, Kimmy. And I, you know, I had a nervous breakdown before I went to the play party because I didn't understand what the options were. I thought everything was
Mm-hmm.
about sex. And then when someone said, would you like a foot massage or Justin to give you a foot massage? And I was like, oh, that's an option. Yeah. you know, and then, you're getting pleasure in all these different ways. And you start to understand, oh, it's not just about this thing. So yes, I think it can be a real disservice when we get pigeonholed in our brains about, gosh, if I don't do this, I'm a failure or I'm not doing it right. And I'm speaking from experience. And so letting go of that, or maybe you need to go through that feeling like a failure for a minute to maybe that's part of the process. It was for me. And now I say, oh gosh, I'm glad I had that experience because now I understand it so much more. And I'm able to speak to somebody that might be going through it from a very genuine, understanding place, which is cool too, right?
Amen. Yeah, there's such a range available. And I want to, if you're listening and you're struggling with that concept of there's a right way to do things, there's a wrong thing to do things, and I want to follow the process and I want to have all the experiences and check them all off. And I get that too. I'm a Capricorn, it's an earth sign thing, and Andrew's a Virgo. So also get it from that
Oh
angle.
shit, yeah.
But also, if you look at like a lot of us are raised from a very young age to look outside of ourselves for the process and the path and the truth. Like it's look to your teachers, look to your parents, look to God, look to the government, whatever. And we're in this journey of realizing, okay, God is within me, and maybe actually I get to trust myself first and use all this outside information and other people's experiences as evidence or permission or like advice, but it's not the end all be all. And I think that that's just been another like topic of the day, like finding yourself, your voice, your
It
truth.
is. It is. What you just said fits in with what we've been talking about getting in touch with that truth. And it's it's been such a process for me because I just didn't even understand, like the play party, what the possibilities were, what it might be. And it just took some time and it's still evolving. And that's great. What if it ended? No, that wouldn't be any fun. I mean, then what? And so we get to keep evolving, we get to keep discovering, and we get to keep, understanding there's no limits. And that's a place that I want to be. I want to be in that space of just constantly discovering and connecting with myself.
Yeah, it gets to be playful, it gets to be curious. It's okay to be afraid. And where can you find the space where you can lean in?
Yeah.
I love all of this. I'm feeling, starting to land the conversation. Is there anything else you want to bring to the listeners or highlight before we start to wrap up?
Yeah, I did. You mentioned Fight for Her at the beginning, this women's
Yes.
initiative that I've helped found under Fight for the Forgotten. So I always dreamed of doing something for women around the world and having a nonprofit, something like that. I never knew how that would possibly come to pass. I put it in an audio vision board that I made years ago, I think in 2018, and I was like, I have a nonprofit that helps women around the world, and and I just put it in there, and I listened to it, and I would think, oh gosh, that sounds great. It was an audio vision board of like my dream day, and
Mm,
what things smell like and what my closet looks like and what I see when I look out the window. Like I went through the whole day and said things like, and I have a nonprofit that helps women around the world, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't have any idea how, and some of the stuff in that still hasn't happened, but some has, including that. And meeting Justin, he already had a nonprofit, and now I got to go with him to Africa to meet the communities that Fight for the Forgotten serves last year. And then we organically developed this women's initiative that makes so much sense for these women. And moving into this path of service has opened up my life in a completely different way that I did not see coming. I knew that it was in there and that I wanted it, but I didn't know how it was going to come about. And so if you've got a dream, anybody listening, I'd say just hold on to it loosely. We don't know how these things are going to come to pass, but oftentimes they do in very unexpected ways and yet still feel very organic. And you get surprised by life. And it has been such a turning point now as I look ahead to the next 50 years. And well, Justin says I have to live till 115 so he can be 100 and I can be 115. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm be exhausted by then. But anyway, so for the next 50-ish years, right? I'm so excited about giving back, helping others, and what service and really being in service in that way looks like. And, using the hand that I've been dealt to help others that maybe haven't been dealt such a good hand or such a privileged hand. And so,
mhm.
I mean, privileged by having clean water at our fingertips. And so that, I guess my point is that we don't know what life is holding and anything can happen. And as you proceed through life, it can open up in a whole new way. So don't discount the coming decade, whatever coming decade that is, because it's so exciting to know that a whole new world awaits. And
Mhm.
we can't even conceive of it. I never in my 20s would have dreamed that in my 40s I would be a rock and roll artist. I never would have dreamed that I would be divorced twice. I never dreamed that I would have two amazing fucking kids. And now I'm beyond my dreams that I get to go help women in Africa. Just today, I got a text that we are really moving forward and buying them sewing machines. They want these. They want to start businesses. This is so life-changing for them. And like, I'm
Oh,
like, what? I have chills, I'm like, this is so exciting. And so when we tapped into this at the beginning, it was some of your best days haven't even happened yet. And you can't even conceive of them. You have no clue what they're going to look like. I never would have dreamed I was going to get engaged in front of the Sphinx in Egypt. I mean, some of your best days haven't even happened yet. You can't even conceive of them. So hold on to that. Let those words sit in your soul just for a second. Come back to them. Let them permeate your
Ah,
thoughts. Some of my best days haven't even happened yet. They're still to come. Ah, so good. And we can't even conceive how they're going to be. So like sit in that truth. That is truth. That is absolute truth. Truth, truth, truth. Even if you're like, no, I'm turning 35. Oh my God, you're a baby. You're young. It's fine. They're still there. Don't worry. So yes. So I know people like, I hear people turning 30 and they're like, oh my God, but I remember that feeling. Like I've got to set all these goals and accomplish this stuff by the time I'm 30. And then you're like, oh my gosh. And then 40, and then 50. And so now I'm just sort of like, whatever, there's time. There's time. And that's the thought I wanted to leave with today.
I love that. Yeah, your best days are still ahead of you. You haven't met everyone that you're going to love yet. Like there's just so many
No.
beautiful things to consider on that. Thank you so much, Amy. Where can people find
Yeah.
you, support you, learn more?
Well, thank you. I'm so happy we're friends. I can't even believe we have a 20-year age difference. Like, that's so
More than
weird.
20 years. It's insane.
More than 20 years. What in the world? I mean, it's so wild. It's so, I just try to like not think, I just don't think about it. Like, I just don't. Um, yeah. So where can everyone find me? Also, I just want to say, like, everyone, if something in this spoke to you, share it with people. Sharing Leola's podcast spreads her message and her words, and it just keeps lighting up the world. So I invite you to share this with several friends and have conversations around it, because those are so amazing when we start to have these conversations. Everyone can find me. My main thing is my show, The Amy Edwards Show. It is on every platform. You can watch it on video on Spotify or YouTube. And of course, I'm on the socials too. You can find me on Instagram at Real Amy Edwards or on TikTok at The Magic Babe. And I am at amyedwards.info. Everything is on there, including my courses, which I have a free course called The Ageless Mindset, and I have a paid course called The Youthfulness Hack. And it's tons of different things that you can do. You can pick what works for you and really start activating the habits that call in this glow, this aliveness that we so long for, but sometimes we're not sure what we need to start working on or cultivating in our own life. And I have tons of ideas for that for you. So anyway, thank you, Leola. I love you so much. I'm so happy that we met. I had heard your name on a podcast that I recorded with Brittany Burton, and I was excited to meet you. And when I did meet you, I was like, yes, yes, please do the show. So it was so wonderful. And I just cherish you and our friendship. And I was honored to be here today.
Oh, I love you too. Thank you so much for joining me today. This was epic. You have some great things for the world. So you guys, you can find the link to everything that she mentioned in the show notes, but also want to express my gratitude to the listener. Thank you for opening yourself up to the idea of agelessness and sexuality and sensuality and opening yourself to love, discovering your truth. With so much gratitude and love, have a sexy and spiritual day, and we'll catch you next week on Talk Tantra to Me. Ta-ta. Oops, just kidding. Still here. I have one last thing for y'all. I want to say that the internet is a really, really special place. It's why we're all here right now. And many of us, including me, wouldn't have discovered Tantra or sacred sexuality if it weren't for this nifty invention of the 20th century. And almost none of you would have found my work and my vision without it. I love the internet, and I deeply desire to expand beyond it, to experience more real life love, community, and connection. So I invite you to check out upcoming Tantra events at www.talktantratome.com/events, or click the link in the show notes. I can't wait to give you a big squeeze in real life. Okay, now that's it. Ta-ta for real. Ta-ta.